Okay. We are back in session after our Wall of Honor ceremony. We have already conducted the good of the cause for the public when we opened the meeting. However, I do see there are folks here. I will reopen public portion for 15 minutes. We have about 4 hours of closed session material that we have to do right after this. So we will have 15 minutes. However, it's split up for the good of the cause. So whoever wants to speak, we'll start that 15 minutes now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, Superintendent, and thank you all for hearing from us this evening. I find it extremely distressing that, according to the information we had, that you've gone off agenda and you've now decided to limit the public portion of our speak tonight. I think that is an infringement on the best interest of the community, where you should be willing to hear from the members of the community who have come to speak. Having said that, because time is limited, I will now speak extremely quickly in order to make my point. First of all, high school graduation requirements. It is not, according to statute, a requirement to take the PARCC according to graduate. The law is very clear. The law says that in 11th grade you will take one test in English and math and not year-end tests for multiple years. The regulations that the New Jersey Department of Education is trying to pass run contrary to state law. There is a challenge by the ACLU and the ELC on that very issue. Until such time that regulations are passed, and I would say that they will be challenged in court, we should not be giving our children the misinformation, quite frankly, the lie, that it is a high school graduation requirement to take the PARCC. They should not at any point be told in 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th grade that they must take the PARCC this year in order to qualify for graduation. That misinformation must stop, and it must come from you as a directive, and it must start immediately. Do not be complicit in the New Jersey Department of Education's attempt to bully our children into taking a test that parents have every right to refuse and that is not required by the law to graduate. Second, PARCC is a slippery slope. It is not just the PARCC that I object to. It is the massive over-testing of our children that is becoming an epidemic in our school systems. My third grader has taken 12 pages of math tests in a week, benchmarks, mid-year assessments, unit tests, English tests, spelling tests, first graders spending 50 days of a school year taking tests. This is outrageous. We are becoming a test and punish educational system, and if you allow this to persist, you are complicit in a corporate means of standardizing education, taking away what makes our school excellent, taking away what makes our students creative thinkers and love learning. Do not be complicit in this. Step back and realize that when you give this many assessments and you require a parent to sign it and you return the assessment to the district because they now consider it their property, not the work product of my child, that you are not interested in the educational outcome of my child. You are not interested in letting them hang a test on the refrigerator and say, look how I did, Mom, or learn from their mistakes by working through their errors at home. You are interested in accumulating data and processing accountability measures for your people who you report to. That is not in the best interest of our children, and it needs to stop. Third, there is a sacred relationship in education between parents, children, and the teacher. And this process of standardized testing, repeatedly overused, done on the computer when you keep the outcomes in your files and not on my refrigerator or my wall, is fracturing and violating that relationship. You have teachers imposing tests they don't believe in who say to me, I just want them to be allowed to be kids. You have parents who can't see the children's work product. And you have children from the ripe age of first grader saying, I've got to go to school and take another test. This has got to stop. Do not be complicit. You have choices. Districts around the state have stood up and passed resolutions in opposition. West Windsor-Plainsboro has said our children are over-tested. You have a choice. If you choose to remain silent, if you choose to allow this to go on, that as elected representatives of our district who are here to protect the education of our children in the best interest of their educational outcome, to give them lifelong learning capabilities, I feel you are failing in those responsibilities. Do not be complicit. Take a stand and say enough is enough. I hope that you give every other parent here this evening equal opportunity to speak. That open public session was not on the agenda, and it should not have been called without the courtesy of calling us in. Thank you.
Karen Goldstein. I live at 61 Cleveland Avenue. I have a 9th grader at this time and 3 who have made it out without PARCC at all. This is the week of the young child, and as an early childhood educator for nearly 25 years, I have become increasingly concerned about how the Common Core curriculum and high-stakes testing, PARCC in particular, are affecting long-held beliefs about the importance of play in the overall development of young children. I'll begin by sharing with you how play influences educational practice and children's readiness to learn. Piaget, the granddaddy of the constructivist theory of education, which is what is taught in this school system, believed that children between the ages of 2 to 7 who are in the pre-operational stage learn through discovery and play about their world and developed language with or without the assistance of adults. He introduced the idea that play was a window that reflected what was going on in the life of a child. Later, Vygotsky countered that children are social learners and construct knowledge best with the help of adults who can define, focus, and extend learning through play, which is called scaffolding, as well as determine the readiness of children to learn by observing play, looking for what is called the zone of proximal development. What is play and why is it so important to the development of children? For children, play is serious business. It is their job. It is through play that children explore their world and practice skills. Play is essential for physical, emotional, and spiritual growth, for intellectual and educational development, for acquiring social, cultural, and behavioral skills and knowledge. The major defining characteristics of play are positive affect, active engagement, intrinsic motivation, freedom from external rules, attention to process rather than product, and non-literality. Play is a critical component of learning for young children and promotes school readiness far more than tracing letters, copying words, computer use, educational TV programming, and matching figures on a worksheet. Play is evolutionary. Its fluid nature requires a child to learn to negotiate, take turns, incorporate the ideas of others, take direction, and explore how things work, all within the naturally safe environment of the familiar classroom or home. Play is predictable and encourages repetition, which seems to contradict the prior statement but supports it instead, by allowing the participants to gain comfort from their past play experiences and use them as springboard for new components in a familiar but ever-evolving scenario. Here's some more to think about. Physically active and vigorous play encourages good health by alleviating stress. Yes, young children have stress. Helping children learn to manage feelings and gain a sense of self-control. Play demands the use of both the body and the mind. Brain research has documented the importance of play in the optimal cognitive development of young children. Cognitive skills advance during problem solving with play materials, ideas, events, and people. The repetition of play helps the brain to hardwire new skills learned during play and secures memory. Research has also established a connection between active, socially engaging play and early literacy development. Dramatic play teaches social skills, turn-taking, playing by the rules, both yours and someone else's, and oral language development. Dramatic play often involves interaction with printed materials like books, menus, and mail, and encourages acquisition of language and literacy through print meaning and making during play. Finally, social competence, which is linked to later school success, is practiced during play. Learning how to incorporate oneself into a dramatic play scenario that is already in play by observation and picking up on the verbal, physical, and social clues of the other participants is essential to social competence. Now, you're all undoubtedly thinking, well, that's nice, but what does it have to do with Common Core or PARCC? Let me connect the dots for you. Both Common Core and PARCC were developed without any input from early childhood educators. It is not developmentally appropriate for kindergartners, first graders, or second graders, let alone preschoolers. It is forced down curriculum of the worst kind. The PARCC test expects third graders to have the cognitive abilities of fifth graders. So let's back this up. If third graders are now being taught to be fifth graders, First graders are being taught to be third graders. 4-year-olds are being expected to learn first grade materials, and 3-year-olds would have to learn kindergarten curriculum in order to be academically ready to take the third grade PARCC test. This is absolutely ridiculous. According to Erickson, children are not ready to learn to read with fluency until they are 8 years old, but PARCC would have us teaching and expecting complete competency in reading to 3-year-olds, some of whom are still in diapers. Most third graders begin the school year at age 8. Am I the only one who sees the insanity in this? Not only would the continued pursuit of Common Core and PARCC testing result in the upending of quality early childhood education programs, which feed our schools, it would spell defeat for nearly every young child forced to feel the failure associated with being subjected to curriculum that is simply not developmentally appropriate. Even now, in an attempt to make sure that our children are kindergarten ready, young learners are sitting in front of computers, doing worksheets, and going to Kumon for additional help. Children are behind before they even begin. Worst of all, these forced down activities have taken the place of play, the thing from which they actually learn. I've been at this a long time now, and I can assure you that by age 8, all typically developing children will be reading with fluency and have a firm grasp of basic math concepts. However, if empathy is not learned through play by age 3, it is generally never learned. I, for one, don't wish that on our children, or for that matter, our teachers.
Good evening. My name is Jody Hoover. I reside at 8 Highview Road. I'm here this evening to voice my opposition to the state's attempt at making PARCC the only path to graduation and to request that you pass a resolution denouncing their proposal. In December of 2014, the NJDOE announced that there would be new graduation requirements beginning with the class of 2016. The HESPA would be removed and students would now need to take PARCC or an alternate test such as the SAT, PSAT, ACT, or ASVAB. And then recently they've announced that the PARCC, their intention is to make PARCC the only graduation pathway to graduation, beginning with the class of 2021, leaving only a portfolio appeals process for students who fail PARCC. This potential impact of the state's proposed policies are especially concerning for our at-risk students such as English language learners and students with disabilities or other special needs. HESPA had a passing rate of 80 to 90%. PARCC had a passing rate of 40% among our high school students. If it had been their only option, New Jersey would have had 50,000 students in jeopardy of not graduating this year. That's 5 times the number that would have been in jeopardy that used to use the appeals process during when HESPA was administered. 5 times. Since 1979, New Jersey has had 4 graduation exams, never once attached a diploma stakes to a new test before several years of field testing. Yet the state announced their plans to do so with PARCC before New Jersey students even took it for the first time. A move towards eliminating all other testing options in order to graduate is premature and highly suspect, and their decision to replace HESPA with PARCC may be illegal as it pertains to our current high school students. In September, the NJDOE was named as the defendant in a lawsuit filed by the Education Law Center and the ACLU of New Jersey. The lawsuit challenges that the state impose the new exam and other fee-based tests as graduation requirements without adopting new regulations as required by law. According to Dr. Valesky's March 28th communication to parents, over 100 of our students entered their senior year ineligible to graduate because they did not take or meet PARCC's or an alternative assessment score threshold. But is there more to the story? Because current New Jersey Department of Education regulations state that when a student enters high school, their district is to provide them and their parents a copy of the district's requirements for graduation. So the current senior class was not informed as freshmen that passing any of these tests would have been a requirement, nor were they told that HESPA would no longer be an option. In fact, current NJDOE regulations state that students must, and I quote, demonstrate proficiency in all sections of the HESPA or AHSA process to receive a state-endorsed diploma. This would contradict Dr. Valesi's communication that PARCC is the state's legally required graduation assessment. In order for that to be true, the state would have had to pass new regulations, which it has yet to do. The state's legal graduation assessment is still HESPA, whether the state chooses to administer it or not. Parents deserve honesty, especially when it comes from something as critical as their child's ability to graduate high school. I believe it's a reasonable expectation that this board is looking out for our students, and that you're being the education, not testing watchdog for our community. It's also reasonable to expect that if the state were doing anything to undermine our students' ability to graduate, that this board would speak out in their defense. The school boards of East Windsor, Highland Park, Clifton, Hopewell Valley, Bloomfield, Washington Township have done just that. They've recognized the problems with the NJDOE's changes and proposals, and they've passed resolutions denouncing the state's actions, urging them to, among other things, remove the minimum passing PARCC score as a graduation requirement, continue to provide multiple pathways to graduation, and that the state continues to respect the rights of parents to make decisions about assessment alternatives that are most appropriate for their children. A similar resolution was even passed at our county level by the Middlesex Regional Educational Services Commission, where Dr. Valesky serves as a board member. 19 of the original 26 PARCC states have stopped using this test. New Jersey not only continues to use it, but is doubling down on its stakes. I'm asking you, our elected board members, to speak up for our East Brunswick students, give them the voice that they deserve, and that you act on behalf of East Brunswick residents, because the state's actions and inability to follow law have exposed our district and other local districts to potential legal challenges by parents of any student denied a diploma. Please pass a resolution denouncing the state's actions and proposals. I have copies of some of the resolutions and the current lawsuit, and I'm happy to provide them if you would like. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are at 15 minutes. We have kids in the front here. I'm going to assume you're speaking on a different matter? No. Or the same? Okay, we're at our 15 minutes. I will say this, and I'm speaking for myself. We had a 7 o'clock meeting, and we have 4 hours of closed session in the back. Ma'am. Okay, I'll just say this, ma'am. We have a meeting on the 28th of April. I will say this. I agree with everything you've said. PARCC is very deficient, and I'm speaking for myself. As far as I'm concerned, the only graduation requirements any district should have is completing your coursework with success. That said, though, okay, we have to get to closed session, and my board attorney is tapping me that there's something that he has to say, so I will pass it on. Mr. Giacobbe, you wanted the floor for a second.
Yeah. The folks that sit up here, they don't make the laws, the regulations. They are required to, please let me speak. They're required to follow the law. They took an oath of office, and when you get up and you become a board member, you agree to uphold the Constitution of the federal government, the state of New Jersey, and all the laws. And whether the board members up here agree or disagree with the laws of New Jersey, they're bound, duty-bound, to uphold those laws. Right now, one of those regulations and laws that is being imposed across the state is this PARCC testing. This board has to put PARCC in place and follow the directives of the Department of Education. There are laws, and I'll tell you, there was one law, and you're all aware of it. It's NJSA 18A 55-2, which actually said that the Commissioner of Education could withhold your state funds if you didn't take the testing. That's not true. Please, stop. That law was changed in December. In December, Governor Christie said that he can't withhold the state the funds. However, there is a federal law. The federal law was passed in December of 2015, and it's Every Student Succeeds Act, in which if 95% of all students and 95% of student subgroups taking standardized tests don't do it, the federal government can withhold funds. So
continue, Ms. Giacobbe.
The reality is these folks up here, whether they agree or disagree, they're duty-bound to uphold the law, and that's what they're doing. People are not required to take the PARCC test. Parents have the right to opt out. This district allows people to opt out for their students. So each parent and their students can have a discussion, and if he or she or the folks want their students to opt out, they have that right to do it. And we don't impose punishment, retribution, etc. A number of kids opted out last year, and I'm sure kids will opt out this year. It's absolutely permissible. But we, as a district, can't say we're not offering PARCC. So that's the position of the board. It's the position of the state of New Jersey. And frankly, the folks that should be addressed in this issue, and I think you guys are all passionate about this, is your state legislatures, the Department of Education, the State Board of Education. That's the.
Join us.
So that's where this should really be addressed, because they're not one person on this board, not one person in administration came up with the idea for PARCC. And what this board has grappled with, just so you guys are all cognizant of, is when they imposed PARCC, they also imposed that it was going to be done electronically. Well, do you know what that cost this district? To have Wi-Fi and computers, et cetera? Was there state funding for that? There wasn't. So these are all things that the districts across the state are grappling with the imposition of PARCC. So we would encourage you to go to your legislatures, go to the State Board of Education, and have your voices heard so that it can be changed at the appropriate level. This board can't change it. Thank you very much.
All right, Ms. Giacobbe, thank you for that. Okay, we need to have order. We need to continue. Ms. Giacobbe, thank you very much for those remarks. I'm going to ask the board, I'm going to combine agenda items G through N. May I have a motion for items G through N in the agenda? Motion by Mrs. Becker, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak? Yes. Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes, motion carries. Do we have any committee or organization reports this evening? Okay, Mrs. Becker.
Hi, I'll make it brief. Make it brief except okay. The curriculum committee met on March 14th. I want to thank everyone who came out, including some pretty wonderful community members. We talked about quite a few issues. Mrs. Chang presented an overview of the World Language Program and things that the district is going to be recommending, and the committee expressed an interest in offering as many languages as possible at the elementary school level as soon as possible. We also heard from several of our computer science people about new texts and courses. A novel was recommended to supplement the U.S. History Honors Curriculum. And we were presented with an overview of the 21st Century Learning Standards and the Technology Standards, which were recently updated by the New Jersey Department of Education. Our next meeting will be in May. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Becker. I need other committee reports. Mrs. Lax.
Sorry.
Finish fast.
Facilities Committee met on March 15th. Thank you, Bernie, for our new system. You have the attachment, so I'll just tell you a couple of the highlights, but all the documents are attached. We talked about the East Brunswick High School gym replacing the dividing wall, the remodeling, relocation, and design of the health suite, which is very exciting. It's something the board has been talking about for years, and some roadway improvements at the high school. We're also doing a facelift to some of our East Elementary computer labs, the Lawrence Brook bus loop improvements, Val Monroe sidewalk replacement, some storage additions, and you'll see also in there a pavement assessment report that everyone should take a look at. So, and then the other thing is there's a couple of site plans for traffic improvements. I know a couple of our elementary schools especially, traffic has been a little bit difficult, so rest assured we're looking at that. And again, the documents are all in there now, online and available, very easy to get to.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Lax. Any other committee reports? Organization reports. Go to the cause for the board. Mrs. Becker.
I just felt like I needed to say something. We've talked before up here about standardized testing, and I've come right out and said that if it was up to me, we wouldn't give any standardized tests to anyone, including the SATs or the ACTs. I have very little use for standardized tests, and I'm very pleased to see that there are colleges that are moving away from the over-reliance on these standardized tests. There was just an article in the New York Times Education report this past weekend that colleges are encouraging kids to do video applications and portfolio assessments and project-based assessments for their end-of-term projects instead of finals at the college level. And I fully believe that this will trickle down, because I think everyone sitting here, everyone, believes that the most important thing is that our children are gaining the knowledge they will need to take their place as citizens of East Brunswick, of the state, of the country, and indeed today with the internet, with our global community. It's important what they do with the knowledge they get. You can go to the most highly rated Ivy League college in the world, and if you don't do anything with the information you receive, if you don't implement it to bring about change or to accomplish something, then that Ivy League education is absolutely no good. Now, I understand you want us to look at a resolution, and we will. We will be provided with copies of it, and we will look at the resolution. But I don't want you to misunderstand for 1 minute. Every person up here is a parent. And our kids either are going through this school district or went for this school district. And don't think for 1 second that we don't understand what education is and what your children need. We're doing our best. We appreciate your feedback.
I'll piggyback off that, Mrs. Becker. As I've said at every meeting we've talked about this, PARCC is a colossal disruption. It's a disruption because I find it personally unnecessary, and it takes up far too much of our students' time, our professionals' time, and everything there. We could all roll our eyes at that. It's terrible, okay? That's my opinion. I'm just speaking for me. Mrs. Becker talked about, we are interested in seeing the resolutions, Mrs. Kornavaca, that I think you might have referred to. We will be considering our own resolution. Again, I cannot speak for my colleagues here, but we will be considering what, if any, resolution is recommended. We'll consult, of course, with our board attorney. But understand that we are all in this together. We are, as Mr. Giacobbe pointed out, unfortunately, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, at the mercy of the state and the federal government. And if we don't play ball, sometimes, Mr. Giacobbe, you mentioned there can be sanctions, I'm assuming. In any case, on that note, is there any other good of the cause for the board, as we do have to move onto our closed session? So, I'm sorry, Papa.
Can I just have 1 minute?
No, I'm sorry, Nick, we cannot. We are finished the closed session. I'm sorry, Papa. If you have anything, or do you want to hold it until the 28th?
You do know that there's press
Okay.
here, right?
Excuse me. Okay, Papa, did you want to go ahead, or do you want to hold to the 28th?
Yeah. All I have to say today is we had the Wall of Honor prior to this other part of the meeting, and I'd just like to congratulate everyone who was granted awards. We've had some great teachers through this district. You mentioned Mr. Broadman in your speech. Ms. Lentz had an award, and those two teachers have been very influential in me matriculating at East Brunswick High School, especially with the We the People program and AP IPPL. Actually, in 8 days, where the AP IPPL team is going to our national competition in DC, and we hope to bring back the title as we did in 2003 and 2004. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to EBEF for funding the AP IPPL team and always guiding us and always providing the necessary funds for us to do everything we do. Beyond this, I'd like to talk about the 19 student athletes who recently signed to continue their athletic career and in college. And I think it's really indicative of how we say that we have excellence in academics, arts, and athletics. So I'd just like to congratulate them as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today.
All right, thank you, Papa. On that note, may I have a motion to go into closed session for the reasons in the agenda this evening, the printed agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shaw, second by Dr. Cohen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.